right, hello and welcome again to a new episode of the KewCast. I'm John and I'm joined by another friend today. We got Clayton Cooley here. Clayton has been, I don't know, we've been playing together quite a bit lately at this big club, Relish. And Clayton is a huge paddle nerd. I noticed that right away. You were rattling off statistics and latest news. You're in Discord quite a bit. So, yeah. And Eddie's gone this week, so thankfully Clayton could sit in. We'll be welcoming Eddie back next week, but thank you, Clayton, for sitting in.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I think, I represent a lot of the viewership here just for a lot of paddle nerds.
Yeah, for sure. My wife was like, she always laughs because I talk about my friends in the pickleball world, and she was like, Clayton, all right, what's his story? And I'm like, he likes paddles.
Yep.
And she's like, is he married? I'm like, no, I've heard him talk about his girlfriend. It's funny because, like, we're friends, but we know very little about each other's kind of private life.
Right.
That's the way it is in pickleball. It's kind of like
absolutely.
You leave like politics, religion, and kind of personal stuff at the door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is great. It's great to do.
There was one funny episode, Tony Spinuzzi. Michelle, my wife, was like, all right, I've got this single friend. She's like 30 years old, really pretty at work. And is there anybody in your pickleball world you can hook her up with? I'm like, I don't know who's single, who's not. I'm like, Tony's a handsome guy. I'm like, I think he's single. And then Michelle was like, well, ask him. And it dragged on for weeks. I'm like, I really don't want to ask Tony if he's single. It's just kind of weird. And finally I did. And he's like, no, I'm married. I got 2 kids.
Like, I'm married, got 2 kids, coming out with a coffee brand with
exactly.
the name being the initials of my kids.
Right. And I didn't know that until I asked him. So good times. Well, Clayton, we've got a good show today. We're going to cover some of the latest news and gear gossip. So things like more news on the pro sponsorship, paddle sponsorship shakeup that we talked about last week. Lots of stuff happened at the beginning of the year.
For sure.
Masters is coming up, so the first big tournament from PPA. Lots of interesting matchups in terms of the pros there. We got paddles of the week coming, so we're going to talk about 2 paddles. Finally, the Honolulu J6CR. We're actually going to talk about. We have the main version of it. We've been dealing with prototypes for a good while now, and there have been reviews of the paddle, and a lot of people have been asking, why haven't you reviewed the CR? Well, it's because all I had was prototypes, not the production model. So we do have the production model. You and I hit with it today, and we hit with the prototypes, so we can kind of talk about the history of what we thought about. And the Gherkin Draco today.
Yeah,
I'm excited about this one. Then we're going to get super nerdy, Clayton. We're going to talk about the field chart. I'm going to give some kind of prototypes of paddles that fit into each quadrant of this chart. A lot of people, this is resonating a lot, this field chart with people. I think it's time we kind of standardize the language. Then we're going to get into tails from the ball cannon. I've got some new spin testing methodology we're going to talk about. And then got quite a few Q&A today I pulled all the Q&A today from the newsletter.
Awesome.
Lots of gems in there. Clayton, shall we do it?
Let's do it.
Okay. Let's jump into latest news and gear gossip. So first, let's do some updates on the pro paddle sponsorships. By now, everybody knows ALW is officially signed with Franklin.
Yeah.
We were speculating last week, and I knew all the way back at Worlds. I promised to keep it quiet, but people were telling me that Anna Lee is shopping around for paddles, and that was very exciting, and a lot of speculation as to where she'd go.
Yeah. A lot of people saying Yola.
Yeah, that's what most people thought. Yola, they had the biggest pockets. And turns out it's Franklin. I'm kind of glad for the Franklin thing.
It's like the little guys are winning.
Yeah. Now, have you heard anything about like J-Dub and Georgia? What's going on with them?
I think I've heard maybe they're shopping around. I think Will Howell's just got a signature paddle, and that kind of is fueling like how many people can you really keep signed at Franklin,
Okay. Will Howell's has a signature
at signature
Franklin?
paddle. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And then back to Anna Lee Waters, I saw today she actually signed with Nike for apparel.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's new news.
Yeah.
See, Clayton is up on the latest news. He's going to give me the scoop on some of the things that I'm not caught up on yet. So we figured Nike was coming. Anna Lee and her mom, Lee Waters, were, I heard, talking with some Nike execs back at Worlds also. So yeah, that makes sense that clothing and apparel and shoes would be Keene for ALW, and Franklin, and yeah, so J-Dub and Georgia. It's surprising they don't have signature paddles
Right.
for them yet after so long being on the roster. Have you heard of where they may go?
I haven't. I mean, lots of people signing with Luz. I think they're probably filling up, but yeah, I haven't heard any concrete rumors on where they might go. But I mean, constantly in the mixed finals, they're definitely representing the paddles well.
Yeah, for sure. Can you talk a little closer to the mic? You can just pull it up.
Yeah.
Close to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also rumors that Andre Dascu is shopping around. He's been a long-term Proton pro. I can't even remember what he played with before. Do you remember back in the old days, he had this other, I think it was another Romanian partner, like big buff dude. Do you remember that guy?
No.
I have no idea what his name is. He dropped off after, this was like COVID years.
Yeah.
And I remember Andre playing with this big like bodybuilder looking guy who's also Eastern European. And they were not playing with Proton at that time, but they both had some off-brand.
There was some, I feel like I remember it's like a paddle with a sword or a shield, not Honolulu, but it had like that kind of style to it. Yeah,
similar, like a medieval flair. Anyway, I heard that he's shopping around. Source for that was JJ from JJ's Pickleball, Dink Tank podcast. And he knows the guys from Proton pretty well. So I imagine.
Yeah, I know they're close.
Yeah, I imagine that this is real news. Apparently, these aren't rumors anymore. So, Gabe, we were speculating, and I heard rumors that he was going to Faculos. Have you heard?
Yeah, he announced on Instagram. Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's huge Vietnamese company.
Yeah.
Faculos together with Saipic. Saipic lost Guangdong. Guangdong is now with
Weepic, maybe.
Wika.
Yeah.
And maybe. Actually, I saw there was an ad out already.
And he kind of came out and spoke against it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
But I think he might just be trying to, control the narrative around the release.
Spoke against it like how?
Like, that's not my paddle or
okay.
kind of, they weren't supposed to do that
Okay.
kind of sort of thing. Yeah. Commented on a Facebook post.
So they jumped the gun, maybe. Interesting. All right. So Gabe to Faculos. But that's the first, like, besides QD, first really top tier pro that is going to a Vietnamese paddle company.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see more.
Yeah, I think so too.
For sure. They've got deep pockets, some of these companies, in China as well.
Yeah, and especially as PPA grows over in Asia.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Have you heard anything else about the pro signings?
I just was thinking of one, but no, not right now. I can't remember.
All right, let's move on to interesting pro partnerships for Masters, the Masters tournament coming up. So we're doing, I don't know if you've seen it, but Brett Mack, who was formerly with the PPA, he was their marketing officer, and some of his friends, he's still affiliated with the PPA, does things with them, but him and some of his friends started like a PPA pickup.
Yep.
And last season, we're already on season 2 now, it was them and some content creators, a bunch of paddle reviewers.
Pickleball
and
Studio.
And Jimmy Miller from King of the Court, and there are different people jumping in occasionally. Hannah Johns was in there for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. And this season, season 2, it will be starting at Masters.
Wow.
And there are only 5 teams.
Oh, wow. A lot more pressure.
Yeah. So I just made all my picks, and going through all of the picks, I was like, wow, there's some really interesting matchups. First, Andre and Fed are doing men's doubles together. That'll be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I think Andre's super solid on the left. I think Fed's really grown into a right side player. We see a lot of aggression out of him, so I think that could go well together, similar to when Andre and Tardio were together.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think that Andre on the left, Fed on the right makes a lot of sense. Andre can stretch his wings. He's got such a big wingspan over there. And Fed, like you said, he really kind of that matches his play style really well to be a menace on the right. Hayden and Christian are teaming up. That'll be fun to watch. I think they've played before, but still. Gabe and Catherine, that's a new matchup.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I want to see. Everybody always roots for Catherine. She's one of the nicest people on the tour, and I really want to see her.
Yeah, I mean, her defense is unmatched for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So
now she's got the boomstick. She's awesome.
Yeah, a little bit of offense back. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be keenly interested to see. you know how it is, even at our level in pickleball and at the amateur level, it's all about, chemistry and partnership.
For sure,
And
for sure.
two people can look great on paper, and once they get together, they play
Yep.
like garbage. And then on the other hand, two people that you never suspect will
Yeah.
do well, just somehow
Yeah.
it clicks for them. Anna Bright is back with Hayden. After cycling through like 8 other mixed doubles partners last year.
Yes.
I don't think it's a long-term thing, but we'll see. Fed is playing with Kate Fahey. So that's a mixed doubles partnership I just saw yesterday when I was making the pick. And I think that has the potential
Absolutely.
for being fireworks. Yeah.
That seems like a team that's going to have really high highs.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%. If Fed can get Kate in her,
Right.
peak state.
3 head hits or less. Right.
Right. Then I could see that. I could see them doing really well. Eric Onsens is playing with Megan Duzan. I think that's a new one too. That should be cool. Will House, recently coming over from APP, is teaming with Rachel Rohrbach.
I could see them going deep.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't mention that in the pro signings. So Friday.
Friday. Yeah.
So signed Rachel, which is super awesome. I heard about that too when the Friday guys visited, but I told them I wouldn't tell anybody and got late to the news. But
and Kyle Kazuda.
Oh, is that official now too?
Yeah,
they told me that too.
As well.
I wasn't sure. I'm so honest with when people tell me to keep a secret. I'm like, I will take it to my
I'll
grave.
even forget it.
Right, and then I never break the news. All right, so that'll be fun to see. I think who knows how they'll play together. Connor Garnett playing with Augie Gah.
That'll be solid.
Yeah. I mean they both are super solid players,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like Augie, he's one of the best players on the tour for sure, but he needs to be matched up with somebody who really brings out his best. He brings out the best in them, so we'll see if that works with Connor. Xiaomei and Matt Wright are running it back.
Love
this
that.
one. Yeah, let's see if they can make as deep as run as they did at the last tournament. Yeah, so I'm kind of jonesing for some good pickleball, pro pickleball. It's been a few weeks now.
Yeah, I know, right? It feels like it's been forever.
I know. By the end of the year, you're like, man, do they really need a tournament every week? Then you go a couple, 3 weeks without a tournament. You're like, man, I need a tournament. So it'll be fun to see. Hopefully everybody, all the pros are feeling well rested and refreshed.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like for us as paddle nerds, this is like one of the most exciting years we've had. I mean, last year was a lot of people playing Pro 4s, Selkirks, but we've got some foam, coming into the mix. I think that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, 100%. Besides the boomstick, what else are we seeing in foam?
Luz Inferno, Tornado, if people start playing with that. Friday's got foam coming, so I think they said they're going to get that dual certified. It should be next month or so.
I wonder if Rachel's going to switch.
Yeah.
So who's playing, who in particular is playing with the Luz Inferno?
I had it on here. Okay, so Hayworth is playing with the Luz.
Okay.
I don't know if he's going to play the Inferno. I think he has played the Cannon in the past, and I think they just got a 14mm Cannon approved.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what his plan is there. And then I know there's another pro that plays with the Tornado, but I can't remember who that is right now.
Okay. Yeah, Chris was playing around with, at Worlds, he was playing around with my Inferno, and I brought the Tornado also. And he liked both. I think he was leaning towards the Tornado. He liked that field profile a little better. But then it was last moment while we were there, and he had been used to playing with the Paddletech TKO CX, and he ended up playing with that one for that tournament. But yeah, I could see him switching.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember his breakout was he beat Ben Johns in singles indoors with the Gearbox Pro Power.
Yes, I do remember that.
And
everybody was
awesome.
like, it was the paddle.
And then he played with the Babolat.
And he still beat everybody. Right. Yeah, cool stuff. It'll be fun. And by the way, we don't know if Anna Lee will be playing with her new Franklin paddle. Right. Because it's not yet, as far as I know, UPA-A approved.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing there is the Franklin tempo shape. I think most people probably hate the short handle, but that fits right into what she likes.
Yeah, it's really close
what
to
she's used to.
The AL-dub shape. So, what's the thinnest in the tempo? 14?
14,
right now?
yep. So she'd have to go Paris Todd for thinner.
Yeah, she could do a Paris Todd. She could play with the 2x4 and probably beat
absolutely.
most people.
Yeah, if you've seen where people post a picture of her paddle and you see the sweet spot is the size of the ball. Just nothing but ball marks, right? The sweet spot.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, she hits that sweet spot every time. All right, Clayton, let's move on to the main part of the show here, paddles of the week.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Gherkin. So, It's funny. We didn't have a relationship with Gherkin, Eddie and I, and then they sent out those
The co-hosts.
paddles to the co-hosts, and I was like, "Why are you leaving out Eddie?" And then they were like, "I'm sorry, we didn't even realize
We couldn't find his email.
You knew about us, right?" So I sent him Eddie's email. They've been a pleasure to communicate with, and they just sent me this totally unannounced, and I was like, I tapped a ball on it. I'm like, feels like full foam, don't know.
Yeah.
And then like a few days later, they sent the email with the details. But before then, I brought it on court. You and I played with it briefly, or I did at least. I can't remember if you hit a few balls. And then today we hit it with it more. And I'm just going to say that this has a ton of potential.
Absolutely.
Clearly, these are initial impressions, but I could see this becoming pretty big, pretty popular.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's a great shape, and the paddle performs really well.
Yeah, 100%. I'll give you some details, some of the metrics, and then you and I can talk about our experience hitting with it on the court today.
Yeah.
So this is what they're calling a new self-sourced foam material. It is a microcellular polymer, NCP for short, and they said it's not any of the EPPs or MPPs that have been used for paddles yet.
Right.
They're saying that they're the only brand on the market using this particular material as of now. Clearly, it's going to be spread throughout the factories in China pretty soon. So again, microcellular center core. It is floating in a band of probably EVA. I put the image here, the diagram of their paddle. This particular unit, stock, it weighs 8 ounces, 8.0 ounces. Static, the swing weight is 113.7. Twist weight, 6.8. And that's a fantastic swing weight to twist weight ratio.
Great place to be.
Yeah. If your swing weight is way down at 114 and your twist weight's way up close to 7, I don't know what they're doing to get that, but internally, but that's great. And it allows, playing stock with it was fine, but it's very, I'm not used to that super low swing weight, so I put the Selkirk MOI style, 6 grams on each side. I just stacked a lead pod underneath a tungsten pod to get 6 grams on each side. I didn't retest the swing weight, but I brought it up about where it's lower than my Selkirk boomstick elongated, but I'm assuming it's probably like 118 or so.
Yeah.
And the twist weight's probably well over 7 now.
For sure.
Which is fantastic. A couple of notable things about this 30-day trial period, so you can test it out for 30 days, send it back if you don't like it, and a limited lifetime warranty.
That's awesome.
That is super awesome.
Depending on what that means.
Right. Well, I mean, every lifetime is limited, but yeah, it depends on the company. But what we've seen over the past year is that most of the new full foam paddles have gone to 1 year warranty from 6 months, and some people have had 3 months before that. But that's kind of the standard now, 1 year, and there's just a few companies that have offered
interesting
lifetime.
Stick out the Loco, still 6 months.
Yeah, true. I wonder why. They didn't get a year on the Loco, but limited lifetime warranty, which is very cool. And the price is right too. So after code, it's $162.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Clayton, what do you think? Give me your impressions kind of where this falls in terms of firepower, sweet spot, the feel of it, and all those things.
Yeah, we were hitting it back to back with the J6CR today and the boomstick, and it was up there with them in power, and I think it was almost at the top when it came to pop. It just had a very lively face, and if you caught the ball in the right spot, it felt like it just launched. I think we both had a couple shots today where we just blocked a ball and it reset to the baseline, and it's like, whoa, okay, this thing's hitting it hard. Yeah, I noticed that on one of yours and mine. I literally moved. It wasn't even a big speed up. Somebody just kind of drove the ball, kind of a drip, and I just did like this, and it went all the way to the baseline. I'm like, okay, it does have a layer of fiberglass too, and we did feel that. It's a very springy. Yeah, you definitely noticed that.
Yeah, it does not feel like just a carbon fiber layout. We did do the KewCor testing on this, and I've got the chart here comparing it to the boomstick elongated. This is right at the top of the legal limit. This is filling a gap in between the Selkirk boomstick elongated. Actually, it might even be above the 6.0 coral.
Wow.
No, sorry, not the coral. 6.0 opal, black opal, which was above the boomstick. That's right at the tip top of the legal limits as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
This came in at 0.442 max KewCor versus 0.431 for the Selkirk boomstick. And you can see the curves here this is measuring from 3 inches on the paddle face, so measuring down from the top, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can see the curve here. The max spot on the Draco is at 4 inches, and the max spot on the boomstick is at 5 inches. That surprised me. I felt like it was a little lower.
Yeah.
The hottest part of the paddle.
Agreed.
But I guess the cannon don't lie, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, both of these are kind of similar curves. I'd say the Draco curve is a little bit flatter than the boomstick. I wouldn't necessarily say that it has a better sweet spot, but it does have a very nice sweet
very
spot.
forgiving.
And this is, by the way, hybrid shape, and I do like this shape a lot. It feels like I wasn't losing much in terms of reach compared to my elongated boomstick, but you're getting that width increase and increase in this.
That above 7 twist weight.
Yeah, and it's so forgiving on off center shots laterally. But yeah, pretty awesome sweet spot.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the feel on this. What are your thoughts on the feel?
Oh yeah. I felt like at the net, on blocks and counters, the ball came off really fast. But when I'd go for a big serve, it felt like it was really holding on to the ball and letting me get that spin and shape on the serve. Yeah. So I could definitely see as that fiberglass breaks in, it getting me even more dwell, and as the foam breaks in, and just becoming a monster. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of like how I'm defining feel now. So, stiff versus soft and hollow versus dense. There is a hollowness to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd put it in probably quadrant B, so stiff and hollow, although really close down to quadrant C, which is softer. So somewhere on the boundary between stiff and soft.
Yeah, I agree. Right?
Okay. Yeah, and it's a little bit softer and less hollow, I'd say, than the Loco.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
But a similar feel profile to the Loco in that it has the layer of fiberglass, very springy off the face, But yeah, I think this is going to be well received because it is. You can feel it's top of the
power,
top of the legal limit for power, and couple that with an oversized sweet spot and the forgiveness that provides. I would not say that this is going to be the easiest paddle to control.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely noticed on some returns, I'm like, okay, just hold the paddle in the place, and it's like, oh, I just hit it out. How'd that happen?
Yeah, there were two in a row where I was playing against you, and I hit this wicked serve. And I was like, oh, I got this thing dialed in, and then my third shot drive hit the back wall, right? Because I just misestimated the height. So this is one of those you're going to have to tame, and it's not going to be easy to tame because it has elite firepower. But like I was mentioning too when we were playing, I think I was playing my best with it when I wasn't thinking about it and I wasn't choking up on my shots and I was just playing loose and free. That's easier to do in rec play like we were playing today.
Absolutely.
Really hard to do at a tournament.
Really got to trust your shots.
So I find my Selkirk boomstick a lot easier to control than this. It's not objectively that much easier to control. I think they're pretty similar in terms of that, but I'm so used to the Selkirk boomstick because that's been my main for so long that I would have to go back to that to feel more comfortable. But yeah, excellent offering from Gherkin. I think this is
already USAP approved, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, that's great. And I think this is going to put Gherkin on the map.
Absolutely.
And get some mainstream eyes on them. They've been kind of flying under the radar for a while now.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've heard if they plan on releasing it in other shapes, but they picked a great one to start.
Yeah. If they had to start with one shape, this is a safe bet.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on.
Okay.
To the headliner here, the Honolulu J6CR. Now, the background here, I know that a lot of people have been kind of chomping at the bit to hear my ideas on this and thoughts on this and a review. And the reason why I haven't, I've mentioned this several times, is that I did not have the final production model until this and one other landed in my hands literally yesterday. Yes, I did have access to several prototypes, and I was helping Jam, the owner of Honolulu, by KewCor testing some of his prototypes before he got them tested at the agency. And I hit with several, and they a lot of them felt quite different, and they went through a lot of iterations. Nothing huge, but in terms of the iterations, the core looked very similar in the X-ray and CT scan, but they did some things differently, which changed. I think it changed the performance in quite a big way.
Yeah,
like the original prototypes that I hit were a little bit mushy feeling. They hit maybe slightly harder than the existing J2 and J6 NF series, but very similar. And my initial thoughts were, yeah, it's a good paddle, but is it warranted to produce another paddle that's very, very similar to the NF series? However, the latest iteration of the prototype that it hit, and which turned into the production model, hits very nice, and it's very distinct from the NF. Distinct from most of the other full foam paddles on the market today. So again, we'll go through the stats and the metrics, and then you and I can give our impressions of how it feels to play with. So this is $175.50 after code. They have been selling pre-orders now for some time, and if you pre-order now, the next batch ships on February 5th. This unit came in at a swing weight of 112.47 for an elongated, super, super light.
Yeah.
I have another unit which came in just slightly higher, I think 113 point something. Twist weight on this, 6.38. So another good swing weight to twist weight ratio. Static weight, 8.0 ounces. All right, so what are they doing in the core differently? What's the build on this? There is a layer of fiberglass in the layup, before I forget to say that. And there's some jargon here. I'll give you what they're telling us it is, and we'll look at the CT scan. So they're saying core reactor, that's what the CR means, with dynamic power flex technology and a control joint technology. Now, let's look at the CT scans. And by the way, the reason why there's numbering on here, this was done by Jam, and he actually CT scanned. He has a CT scanner now at his lab. He CT scanned both paddles he sent me, and I'm downloading that information. I can look at it in 3 dimensions. This one is from the latest prototype, though, which is the same build. So what CT scanners do is they scan in 3 dimensions going through. So what we're looking at is just underneath the face sheets. And I can explain this, and I'll put this in B-roll. I'll put the video of it going through. But you can actually see the layup angles of the face sheets. So you can see 0 degrees. I call this 0 on the vertical axis. I know industry standard is to call this 0, but that makes no sense to me.
I like 0 that way as well.
So 0 on the carbon fiber. The second layer down is at 90 degrees. I think that's the fiberglass layer. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the 3rd layer down. And then I couldn't quite see it, but I assume that it's a 0, 90, 0. And then just underneath the face layer, this is what it looks like. You can see that there is EPP foam, and right in the middle of the EPP foam is kind of this parabola shaped kind of upside down U and kind of a lid on top of that, right? And those are, you see there's separation between the foam there. And those are, and they were originally incisions.
Okay.
They were cut with a knife in the early prototypes, and now they are fully molded incisions. Okay. And what Jam told me, and this is I've been noticing this in paddles also, when you cut through EPP, expanded polypropylene, it slices open the beads, right? So the beads are what expand in the expanded polypropylene and fill out, and they expand to whatever constructions you're putting on it, the mold, right? And that's how you get different densities in EPP, is the number of beads, basically. You weigh the beads, you pour them into the mold, they expand into whatever shape it is, and you can go super low density. If you go too low, you're going to feel deflection and PB core. If you go too high, it's going to feel too dense and be too heavy, right? So what happens when you slice through them is that it makes the paddle feel a little bit mushy. Now, this can be bad, or it can be nice. It can be plusher. There's a way to do it that can be plush. So think like the 6.0 type tectonic core that's sliced, and also the apes has a similar concept where they're slicing and dicing up their core, right? But both of those have a very plush feel. And some people who don't like the plusher feel, the derogatory word I'd say would be mushy.
Yeah.
Right? It's a mushier feel. The reason is that it's popping open those little beads that are self-sealed when the EPP is molded. Now, what they changed from the early versions, which hit very similar to the NF models, and the latest versions, which hit differently, the main thing they changed was fully molding this. So all the beads are poured into a mold, which has these what look like incisions, right? And then they expand. So none of the beads are broken in post by slicing them open. So they're retaining kind of that shell surrounding them and maintaining the pressure inside. You know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think if any paddle manufacturers are listening, it's a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a trend. Not that it always has to be the case, but this is going to give it a poppier, more responsive feel, more connected to the ball feel, and less plush, less soft, less mushy. Okay. Now, interesting thing about this, this does not go all the way through the core. So if you look at the second CT image here, this is right in the middle of the core. So I'll show this as, a video in B-roll here, but as you get underneath the surface layup, you see the separation in the core, and then as soon as you hit the middle, there is no separation, and then you go to the opposite side, and that separation shows up again. So what they're doing is they're molding kind of these lines to allow dwell time and flex into the outside.
Right.
Like, let's say we have a sandwich. The sandwich has a thick layer of ham in the middle, and there's 2 slices of Wonder Bread on each side. They're molding the slices only in the Wonder Bread slices, and the ham remains intact in the center, right?
Right.
So that's interesting. We've never seen that before, and who knows what it translates to in terms of performance, but we'll talk about performance in a second. Now, let's look at outside of the center of the core, this EPP core. There's a little bit of notching similar to what's going on in NF. There is a layer of EVA surrounding this, and then there's something new going on in the neck. You can see in the neck there is a layer of EPP surrounded by what we're calling now like sushi roll expanding foam, meaning they put expanding foam inside of a raw carbon fiber unidirectional roll, basically, and it expands and fills up. That's been used in thermoformed paddles for years now to fill up the edges of the paddle. You can see that's happening in the neck, both going up into the neck, up towards the cheeks, and also separating the EVA foam from that kind of circular-shaped, rounded insert of EPP down in the neck, which we haven't seen anything like this before. And I think I've heard the purpose of this is to enhance the dwell of the paddle, as well as...
Yeah, I've heard it described as a pivot point, and it helps to keep the paddle more linear or give you a better response across the face.
Okay. Pivot meaning... And twisting or
pivoting, like kind of like you said. So if you imagine the face being able to move,
Okay, yeah, that would make more sense because we wouldn't want more twists on a paddle, but we do want more. Not necessarily more, but it can be beneficial to have some diving board.
Yeah,
I do like this concept too. Now, what happens when the diving board or the flexure is at the neck, down a little lower? Is some people love it, some people hate it. It becomes a very polarizing paddle. So a lot of the Gen 1 paddles don't have any carbon fiber going through the neck, so they're very kind of floppy feeling. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
Like I used to be able to play with them, now I cannot.
Yeah, when you go back.
Yeah, once you go like thermoform unibody, you really can't go back to a flexible neck. And I don't like that feel at all. Some people do, but this is allowing some more flex, but it's pushed further up, so it's not at the neck, it's kind of in that throat area. So
right.
Yeah, I'll have to play with it more before I can say if that is actually doing anything different in terms of how I feel on the court. So let's talk about our field perceptions of the paddle. What do you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I picked it up. I was instantly able to play with it. I noticed the power level was good. I would put it above power level of the Alpha Pro Power. That's what I normally play with, just as a baseline. It felt like, when you need it, the power is there, but it wasn't too poppy at the net. Like, it's plenty of pop to put a ball away, but easily controllable. I played it back-to-back with the boomstick. I was like, man, this is so much easier for me, as someone who doesn't play the boomstick all the time.
Yeah, 100%. So you're putting the overall firepower somewhere between the boomstick and your 11.624.
Yeah, and I think with it being closer to the boomstick level.
Okay.
And I would say the feel, I think I would put it between hollow and dense. It didn't feel too dense, but not hollow. Somewhere in the middle there, I think.
Yeah, I could feel that too. It definitely feels hollower than the NF series, than the Notch Foam series a little bit. It's not super, super noticeable, but there's a hollower response to me. And I might I'd put it again somewhere in the boundary between quadrant B and C in my field chart. So B is hollow and stiff and C is hollow and soft, but closer to the center because that density, it's not super, super hollow. You know what I mean? And I agree with the firepower. It falls somewhere just short, I'd say, of the Loco firepower. And those are initial impressions. Yeah. Those could change. Anything could change. Yeah. Again, we've played a few games with these today and hit the prototypes. But yeah, I think the firepower is definitely noticeably more than the NF series.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different feel profile. In terms of the sweet spot, if I'm comparing it to the NF, it's at least as good as the NF. Yeah. And it does have I'm going to say unique feel for a foam paddle on the market. Now, that does not mean it stands out on its own and is nothing like anything else on the market. Very subtly unique feel. All of these floating full foam paddles in a similar fashion. You've got some different feel profiles for each of them. But there are some things going on, I think, in the core that are contributing to that kind of...
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's going to fill a nice niche in the market. And of course, it's going to be popular. Everybody loves them at Honolulu. And I think the new white on black, I think there's blue on black options coming also will be popular. And we have some prototypes of new shapes also.
Yeah, it looks really clean.
The J3 and the J2. And so I'm not going to spew too much praise on this right now, even though I do really like it.
Yeah, you got to do your due diligence. It could play completely different after 10 hours, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know that right now.
But very promising.
Yeah, and I would say, just to go back to compare it to the Draco, I didn't notice that this had fiberglass. With the Draco, I kind of clocked it right away. I was like, something's giving it that springiness. I didn't notice that with this, so I think maybe something going on in the core. And I think another interesting thing with these fiberglass layers is I know sometimes paddles actually have a fiberglass weave versus like a unidirectional fiberglass layer, and that can make a difference as well. So I think it'd be interesting to know who's doing what. You know?
A really good observation. I meant to mention that, so I'm glad you brought it up. This does not feel like a Loco or a Draco in terms of right away I hit those and I'm like, oh, fiberglass. This one is a lot more subtle.
Yeah.
It's springy. You can maybe, if you thought hard, you could feel the fiberglass.
Yeah.
But in the same way that the J2 and F also has fiberglass, and it's not that noticeable. Hitting the J2 and F and FC Plus together side by side, they're pretty hard to distinguish.
Yeah.
So I think that the fiberglass works well in this for people who don't necessarily like the fiberglass spring.
Yeah.
But it's giving it enough spring to make it more offensive without being uncontrollable.
Yeah.
I do feel like I hit some resets in the transition zone with this, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, very forgiving. But then when you get on it from the baseline, it's like, okay, maybe there is a little fiberglass here.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, well done, Honolulu. They're cooking, man. They keep putting out hit after hit. Hard to cover up this beautiful Luz Inferno.
Only because it hasn't been played yet. One hit on the court, right?
Exactly.
It'll be white.
Now I'm going to make Selkirk mad for putting it over the Regal. All right. I think that's all we should talk about for the new Honolulu. All right. People have been asking for a while, and I've been kind of explaining, but I wanted to put together a chart that shows where popular paddles fall on this new field chart. So the first one shows just the blank chart. And again, we have 4 quadrants, A, B, C, and D. And on the vertical axis, it goes from stiff at top to soft at bottom. Horizontal axis goes from dense at left to hollow at right. So on the A quadrant, which is stiff plus dense, you're getting kind of this field description of solid, can be rigid if it gets too stiff, kind of unyielding. Board-like is the negative connotations with this, but there can be some good paddles in this. I wouldn't max out the density and stiffness if you want to make it a more forgiving paddle, but regardless. Quadrant B is stiff and hollow, and the feel profile of that is kind of loud, sharp, crisp, connected to the ball, you know, kind of that Gen 3 feeling, you know. Quadrant C is soft and hollow. So the same hollowness, but you get a little bit more plushness, a little bit more springiness, airy feeling. And then finally, quadrant D is soft plus dense, and the field description on that is more muted, plush, dampened, more pillow-like, right? And can be more arm-friendly. So if you're suffering from, tennis elbow, pickleball elbow, sometimes that quadrant D can be helpful to get over that. All right, and then the second image here I showed kind of some really popular paddles that most people have had experience hitting and where they fall in this. So let's start again with quadrant A, which is Again, the stiff plus dense quadrant. On the extreme side of that, we've got the Selkirk Power Air. Remember those really thin neck hole paddles?
Piece of plywood.
It feels like very plywood-like. And then on the less stiffer side, but more dense side, we have the carbon true foam Genesis. And, I'd probably put like the enhanced Gen 4.5 in there as well. That has a denser feel. And most non-thermoformed, non-floating EPP cores will fit over there. And there are also some, Gen 2 cores Gen 2 paddles that will creep up in there. But I think that suffices. Can you think of any others in that one?
I've only hit the VSOL Pro briefly, but I think I would almost, to me, it's on the denser side and the ball comes off pretty fast.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, VSOL Pro. VSOL Power is what I would put in
okay,
there.
yeah.
But not the Pros. The Pros are more hollow.
Yeah.
All right, so Quadrant B, which is hollow and stiff. Selkirk Boomstick is probably the most prototypical one. That's
sure.
extremely hollow, extremely stiff. The Yellow Pro 4s are also hollow and stiff, a little less on both accounts than as Selkirk Boomstick. Moving down to Quadrant C, hollow and soft. So we've got the classic one there is the Gearbox GX2 Power. There aren't many paddles that are both hollow and soft, but that one is just like it captures them both perfectly, right? And then finally, Quadrant D, so dense plus soft, is the Gearbox GX2. So remember the GX2 came out before the GX2 Power?
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like super plush.
Pillow.
Yeah, and it's much denser than the GX2 Power. And then I feel like a lot of the Gen 1s and Gen 2s are going to fall into the denser and softer quadrant.
Yeah, especially with that handle flex.
Yeah. So I would say most Gen 1s will. Some of them get a little stiffer and
like
fall. Paddletech moves a little bit more towards the hollow side too, because you're using large cell polypropylene. Your 11624 Alpha Pro Power, also large cell polypropylene, so it's giving it a hollower feel. But hollow and stiff, I'd put it, probably right in between stiff and soft.
Yep, that's what I was thinking, toe in the line.
Okay, yeah. But the original Power 11624 Power series was denser and stiffer. So that's one that would fill Quadrant A, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Again, for Quadrant D, dense plus soft. Some of the thermoformed raw carbon fiber paddles too fit in there. I'm thinking like the Rhombus Pulsar. Remember that one?
Was that with the grid? Or that would be the FX series?
That was the FX. That one probably fits in here too. But yeah, if it's plush and dense, then obviously it's going to fit in here.
Yeah, I think Pulsar was the first with the carbon grid. That was their solution to core crushing, they thought, right?
Right.
How far we've come.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think...
Turns out just don't squish the polypropylene.
Yes, don't core crush it in the factory. That'll go a long way.
Right.
But yeah, I think this is going to be so important to have with all the new foam paddles coming out. I think, in the past you could get away with, most paddles had a similar feel. But with the foam, I mean, it's just the spectrum's so wide.
Yeah.
So
yeah, foam is going to fill every one of these quadrants, and polypropylene can also, but I feel like there's a lot more variability in terms of feel profiles on full foam paddles.
Yeah.
All right, good sir. Let's jump into Tales from the Ball Cannon. I've been super excited about doing this for a while, and I've been meaning to switch from the way I've been spin testing to something more objective and standardized. And if you've been following me for a while, you know exactly how I do this, but I'll go ahead and explain it for people that don't know. So to get spin numbers on paddles, I have a Stalker 3S radar gun, which measures both miles per hour and RPM. It does it through some kind of Doppler radar effect, which is great. And it's highly accurate on the RPMs and speed. But what I'm doing is doing top spin serves and spinning it as hard as I can to get those RPMs. And it's been great. It's been working, but there is obviously going to be some variation day to day. And the climate conditions at the court's not going to be always exactly the same. Some days are going to be warmer, other days colder, more humid.
Yeah, what side of the bed you woke up on, right?
And my arm gets tired as I'm going. So it's I'm not a machine, right? And it's been super useful, but I always have been thinking about something to standardize this a little more. So I did break down and make a big investment in a high-speed camera. So I'm using the FreeFly Wave, if any of you know that model, which also has other perks. There are some cameras that go higher frames per second. This one goes up to 9,200 frames per second. But you can get HD 4K at like hundreds of frames per second, which is pretty unheard of. Yeah. And it's literally, you can just click a button and turn it on, and it'll run until it's out of space or the battery runs out, and you can click the button, obviously, to turn it off. Most of the super high-end that go into the thousands of frame per second cameras require triggers, and flashes, because you have to have a lot of light to shoot at such a high frame rate. And typically that involves, things like bullets and stuff that are traveling at a high rate. Mm-hmm. So you have to shoot the bullet through a speed gate trigger and have a flash on the other end.
Right.
Huge pain in the butt. So this one's super simple. You set it up, you get the lighting right, and you can see it in the monitor. You press the button, record, and then press the button again and take it to the courts and get some really cool footage. Lots of utility on this camera. I hope. I'm telling myself this to justify the cost.
Business expense, right?
So anyhow, got some initial results. We're going to show those next in terms of ball impacts, which are really cool. But I'm using the FreeFly Wave high-speed camera to actually measure spin out in combination with the ball cannon. So the methodology I've landed on, and I've tested this methodology. I originally borrowed it from PPL, but I wanted to test it myself to see,
validate it.
Yeah, to see what different angles look like, what different inbound speeds look like. But the premise is I'm clamping the paddle. I'm not allowing it to rotate out like a PB core. So I'm locking the clamp and clamping it at an angle. The ball is shot from a cannon, hits the paddle, and spins off. Mm-hmm. And I'm using the high-speed camera to capture the spinning. And then I look at one full revolution and then do the math for the frames per second and see what that results in terms of RPM. So I knew that PPL is using 30 degrees, so I wanted to test that. Yeah. So here is a fancy image of a protractor and what the angles look like. So 30 degrees in the middle, 35 up top, and 25. I tested all three. The next one shows, the ball direction. The ball is coming at the paddle and striking it and then spinning off. All right. The next line chart shows what these angles look like. And I actually measured 25 degrees, 30 degrees, 32 degrees, and then 35 degrees. I threw in that 32 degrees after I saw the trend on the others. So let's talk about the trend at 25 degrees. Now, 25 degrees is a very low angle. So the ball's coming this way. It's tilted way down here. And you're getting really low RPMs on that.
A lot of slip.
The grit cannot hold on to the ball and it's sliding across the grid. That's the perfectly logical explanation. Now, raising that up to 30 degrees, which is just 5 degrees, not much. Huge jump in RPM. So this is the Selkirk boomstick, what I was using. So it went from 1270 RPM at 25 degrees all the way up to 1992 RPM at 30 degrees. By the way, this is 50 miles an hour inbound. And then skip over to 35 degrees. So I saw a noticeable drop at 35 degrees. So again, this is raising the angle so that the ball is hitting a kind of a steeper paddle, right?
Right.
And it dropped compared to the 30 degrees. So I looked, 25 degrees super low, 30 degrees super high, 35 degrees somewhere in between 30 and 25. So I was like, well, maybe 32 degrees is the sweet spot. So I shifted it over to 32 degrees, very similar to 30 degrees, but slightly lower than. So clearly, the sweet spot on this to get the highest RPM is at 30 degrees.
Yeah, they didn't just draw it out of a hat, right? They did some testing.
Yeah, they did their own testing, and I'm sure they found the same information.
And I would say, just to ground this chart a little bit, do you recall what your old spin testing put the RPMs of the boomstick at?
It's higher. With my arm, I can get 2,300 RPM with the boomstick on average, and this I'm taking the maximum rather than an average,
right?
Because you do get quite a bit of variability, as we'll see here. As long as the maximum isn't a complete outlier. I've got to see two pretty close together, and I'm taking 10 shots on each paddle, and if usually you get a grouping at this high spot, and that's what happened on the boomstick. Yeah, cool. Let's look at the scatter plot next, because what would an episode of QCast be without an XY scatter? So, I wanted to take a look at what the best inbound range, so what the ball speed is, and see what that trend looks like. So You can see that on the x-axis we had miles per hour, and on the y-axis RPM. And you can see a clear trend here where the lower inbound speeds result in lower RPMs, and the higher ones and higher. That makes sense because the more paddle head speed you get on a shot, the more spin. Like you don't try to get maximum spin by going like this. You're like this, right? So, but it does start leveling off. So you start to see like a positive distribution. This distribution, by the way, is not entirely linear. I used a polynomial distribution to fit it, and it is kind of I'd call it a concave down distribution, possibly logarithmic, kind of the opposite of a exponential curve. So what you're getting is a steeper curve at the bottom. You see a steeper linear distribution between speed and spin, but then it starts leveling off a bit around above 60 miles an hour.
Yep.
So the next paddle here, which doesn't have as many data points, is the Luz Inferno, which shows exactly the same concave down trend. So what this has allowed me to do, and this is where I'm going to be differing from PPL. They're using 40 miles an hour inbound. I'm going to bump it up to the 55 to 60 mile an hour range.
Yeah,
that's going to be my window.
Yeah, looking at this chart, you got to go higher.
Yeah, and they're doing something where they're getting pretty high spin from around 40. Maybe I don't know what they're doing differently, but using my
different ball
here, maybe different ball. That's one thing. This is the Lifetime ball, by the way.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed with the Lifetime ball is it doesn't really seem to catch dust in the grit like a Franklin does or like a Vulcan.
Yeah, that's true.
So it could be something with that interaction.
Yeah, and it doesn't get as roughed up either after you hit it a few times than the others. So the others might be generating more spin. So yeah, that could be it. Anyhow, so all interesting stuff. And the R squared on these is, on the Luz Inferno, that curve is predicting 80% of variance in those data points, and it's even higher for the Luz Inferno, 0.933, which is pretty good. Okay, and so basically I repeated the PPL's findings with the exception of inbound speed. I'm using a higher inbound speed, which might, like you said, be related to the ball. Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, I can already think of a couple of things I'm excited to see. Similar with the pickle skins that you did in the past, I'd like to see that with the RPM test so we can see how the core affects spin.
Yeah.
And then also I'd like to see a lower speed test on a paddle with new grit versus smooth grit to see, as we've theorized, that grit does become important in the kitchen on the top spin dinks. This
will allow us to do all that testing and test spin durability. Oh, another thing. I'm actually going to do 2 inbound speeds and collect the bracket from 35 to 40 miles an hour and up at 55 to 60 miles an hour.
Okay.
And what I'm hoping is that the 35 to 40 miles an hour is going to give an indication of like the kitchen spin you're getting with flick shots, Yep. And because there is a difference. Some paddles you notice get good spin from the baseline because of some different variables, but at the kitchen with the flicks or even like 2E top spin dinks, cross-court dinks, you can't get a ton of spin with them. And others, you can really get good dip at the kitchen.
Yeah.
So I wonder if those trends are going to flesh themselves out.
Yeah, I think the grit really does the work there. I mean, you think about the amount of contact the ball is going to have with the face of the baseline versus at the kitchen. You're really just going to be relying on that grit at the kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah, you're getting more dwell, we're going to talk about dwell in a minute, but you get more dwell at the baseline. Notice I didn't say dwell time. That's an important key distinction. So I found something. We myth busted here. We myth busted. So let's jump into that. I've already teased this. So I'm going to borrow the laptop here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Then you and I are going to see some high-speed footage. So I also use the free fly camera to record some ball impacts with the paddles, just doing like PB-core stuff, right? So the paddle's not tilted at an angle. I'll also show in B-roll what it looks like with the ball spinning off of a tilted paddle. But the paddle is clamped flat, allowed to swing out. And I use different balls. I used the Lifetime and the Franklin X40, and then a Franklin ball without holes that the USAP uses, just to kind of look at how they behave differently at high speed, and different inbound speeds and different paddles. And what I wanted to kind of address quickly last night when I was doing this to talk about on the pod is dwell time a myth? Or is it real?
Yeah.
And we should be able to see, and actually at 9,200 frames per second, which the free fly can go up to, that breaks down to each frame is 1/10 of a millisecond.
Wow.
So we already know that if we can estimate that most estimations put the dwell time of a pickleball on a paddle at about 1 to 2 milliseconds, right? So we can actually measure this now with this high-speed camera and see if a dwelly paddle, so I use the Luz Inferno and the Selkirk boomstick. I feel like the Luz is the ultimate dwell paddle, right?
Yeah.
And I compared that to the Franklin vintage wooden paddle, which is the opposite of dwell, right? It's as stiff as you can get, right?
So is that 10 to 20 frames we're going to get to see of ball contact, that sounds like, right? If it's a tenth of a millisecond. Yeah.
Exactly. So 20 frames, well, assuming that the 2 milliseconds is correct. So let me pull up some videos. Okay. So this is a straight on. I'm filming in parallel, and the camera's right beside the ball cannon, and you're looking through the speed gate. This is the Pickle wooden paddle on top and the Luz Inferno on the bottom. So I'm going to start the video. We'll pause it after we watch it one time through and then kind of see what's going on. All right. So this, by the way, is a 60-mile-an-hour inbound ball. Now, that is at 9,200 frames per second. We can slow it down and do a little bit slower motion. Check out the Luz on the bottom. Watch what happens after the ball hits. Do you see that undulation?
The vibrations.
Yes. So you can actually see where the center EPP core hugs the ball, and then when the ball's off the paddle vibrates back and forth. That EPP, the EVA band around it is serving actually as springs, as we suspected. And you can see it. Let me play this from the beginning again, and we'll slow it down even more. And you can see no dwell on the pickle, obviously.
Right.
Okay, there's the first impact. And then when we slow it down, I'm going to stop it right before the ball hits. Now, frame by frame, that's contact on both paddles. Now, look at the center of the Inferno. You can start to see the kind of square around the center EPP where it makes contact with the EVA. There it is, right there. Yeah. It's starting to sink into the paddle face. And if we advance it, when the ball's off, you can see the paddle actually kind of vibrating. And this is so slow. Literally, each one of these frames is a tenth of a millisecond, right? Which is pretty cool. All right. I'm going to show some other angles that are more illuminating in a second. This is straight on with the Inferno versus the boomstick. We're going to see a very similar response on the Inferno versus the boomstick. You see the vibration on both?
Yeah.
Now this one's going to be slower.
Wow.
Now, one thing I noticed is the boomstick vibrates back and forth quicker than does the Inferno.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because the boomstick feels stiffer than the Inferno.
Yeah.
Right? The Inferno goes boom, 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 and the boomstick goes boom, 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 back and forth, right?
Yeah. And this Inferno has not been stomped, but it has been played with thoroughly.
It's, not stomped. I did not stomp it, but it feels like a stomp.
Yeah, I don't want to say this is giving validity to the stomp, but I'm seeing some action here.
Okay. Interesting stuff here. Now let's look at a different angle. All right, so this is more of a side angle with the pickle on top and the Luz Inferno on the bottom. And we're going to see what's happening with the ball in particular here. Again, 60-mile-an-hour inbound. Now, an interesting thing about the pickle paddle, it is bending.
Yeah, you see it
see
flex.
that? So, but it's a very different flex than what we're seeing in the Inferno with the floating core. So on the pickle, it is a beam flex, meaning like if you took a 2x4 and you hit it with the ball very fast, it would go, it would flex like this, right? Just like the pickle is doing, versus a trampoline flex on the Luz Inferno because it is a floating core. So instead of like the whole beam flexing like this on the Inferno, it's catching the ball in the face of the paddle and releasing it like a tennis racket would, right? So yeah, you can see that's really slow, but you can see the Luz Inferno.
Man, now I need to see the diving board flex. I need to see a Pro 4.
Yeah. Oh, we do need to see that. Yeah. That'll be next. There's so much potential with this camera. I'm so excited. And look at how fast the ball is coming off of the Luz Inferno compared to the pickle. That's just an issue of PB core, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The outbound to inbound ratio is much higher for the Luz.
This camera's already paid for itself in joy. You can't put a price on that.
That's right. All right, let's compare the Inferno to the boomstick. Same response. We're seeing a trampoline bend, and after the ball is gone, they're both kind of going back and forth, like flexing back and forth. But the flex on the Luz Inferno is slower than on the boomstick. So that is when the ball is touching initial contact on both paddles. By the way, I'm using the Franklin ball without holes on this because it penetrates the core a little more. It doesn't flex itself. Yeah, a little more weight, and without the holes, it's
a little more rigid.
Yeah. Now, I want you to take a look at. So the ball is collapsing in on itself. The core is absorbing the ball, and neither one of the frames have started to move backward yet. Now, remember, this paddle isn't clamped.
Right.
It's allowed to swing freely. But I'm going to advance it frame by frame, and we're going to see that the boomstick starts to bounce back. The frame of it starts to bounce back a little sooner, like 1 to 2 frames sooner than does the Luz Inferno. And what that means to me is the Luz Inferno has more dwell. It's pocketing the ball more versus the boomstick, which is catching and releasing it quicker. And as it's releasing as it's catching, the frame stays in the same place. As it's releasing, the frame starts going back. So let's watch here. Frame by frame, neither one of the paddle frames is moving. The ball is sinking into the paddle face. Now we're starting to see the boomstick frame move backwards. I'm going to reverse it one. Advance one. There goes the boomstick frame. Luz Inferno frame is completely stationary. It's still absorbing the ball. Still absorbing the ball after the next one. Now it's starting to go back, which, it makes a difference. You can feel that. Now, we're not feeling 1/10 of a millisecond.
Yeah.
We're incapable of feeling that, but we can feel this pocketing, right?
Yeah.
We can feel the face of the paddle sink in a little more. So we're not all crazy. We're not crazy thinking that the Inferno and others like it have a lot of dwell. Now, what do I mean by dwell time versus dwell? Let's look at that next. This is what blew my mind. Looking at it exactly at a right angle to the paddle.
Yeah, and while he's pulling this video up, I just wanted to say, for anyone that's questioned, how can the paddle be clamped freely, or how can it not matter how hard it's clamped necessarily? When you see the ball there compressing, even though the paddle hasn't moved back, that's kind of an indicator that's why it doesn't matter. You're still getting that ball flex. You don't need the paddle to be clamped stationary.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we got Pickle Vintage Wooden on top, Luz Inferno in the middle, Selkirk Boomstick on the bottom. I'm going to play it through once and then we'll stop it. Impacting. Now it's going to do, you can see the Luz Inferno, the overgrip is actually flapping. There's quite a bit of ball compression there.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, we're going to break this down even further and take a look at which paddle has the most dwell. So super, super slow-mo. All right, the ball impacts each paddle at the exact same time here. So I'm going to advance frame by frame. So right now, the ball is compressing, the paddle face is compressing on the Inferno and Boomstick, but the face is not compressing on the Pickle. It's not pocketing, but you're getting beam flex, right, on the wooden paddle.
Right.
Okay, the ball is still compressing, and so far, I'd say probably 1/2 inch, the ball is caved in on itself, and there's been zero pushback on the paddles yet. They are completely stationary. So all that energy is being absorbed before the paddles even start to bounce back. Now look, that last frame, the Selkirk Boomstick is the first paddle to start bouncing back.
Yeah.
That means that the Pickle Vintage Wooden, so far, is capturing the energy of the ball in ways longer than is the Selkirk Boomstick.
More dwell than the Boomstick. You heard it here first.
Not more dwell, but more dwell time.
There we go.
Here we go. All right, so advancing forward, the Selkirk Boomstick frame is moving backwards, and so far the Pickle Wooden and the Luz Inferno are completely stationary. Okay, now all the paddles are moving backwards, but let's look at exactly when the ball comes off of each paddle. The ball is now off of the Boomstick, but it's still on the Inferno and the Vintage Wooden paddle. I can't tell, but it looks like it's either just leaving the Inferno or it's still on, but it's definitely still on the wooden paddle.
Agreed.
And now it's just coming off the Vintage Wooden paddle. So I broke down and did the math and counted the number of frames at 9,200 frames per second.
Yep.
And it came in at 19 for the Boomstick, 20 for the Inferno, 21 for the wooden paddle.
Wow.
Which means the most dwell time happens on the wooden paddle. Now, how could this be? Well, we're talking about dwell time versus dwell. So strictly speaking, dwell time is how long does that ball stay on the face of the paddle. That does not mean that you're getting pocketing of the ball. Dwell in and of itself is, in my mind, how the paddle pockets the ball and then launches it back off.
Yeah.
Now, for sure, the Inferno and the Boomstick are more dwelly than is the wooden paddle, but due to the physics of the way the paddle is behaving in terms of the beam bend you're getting in the wooden paddle, as well as a very low PB core on the wooden paddle, it's not bouncing the ball off. It's not as lively of a paddle. So what you're going to see is lower power paddles are going to have more dwell time because they don't bounce the ball off as quickly than more powerful paddles that have more dwell, not necessarily more dwell time. So myth busted.
Wow.
Dwell time is not what we think it was. We think of dwell time as like the Luz Inferno has more dwell time. Something super soft and plush has more dwell time. No, dwell time is a function of how long the ball stays on the paddle face, and that's it. That's by itself, and that can be a function of. It's more a function of the power of the paddle and how lively the face is, versus how much cupping and actual dwell you're getting on the paddle face.
Yeah, and I think this is backed up. I've heard a lot of people when they talk about the boomstick, they feel like it pockets the ball, but it also comes off of the face really fast, and that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Exactly. So our feel isn't that off, right? Which is blows my mind because I thought it would be busted. First, I thought we'd see more dwell on the Luz Inferno, more dwell time. We are seeing more dwell. So define this. Dwell time, how long the ball stays on the face in milliseconds, which is about 2. Yeah. And it's going to be almost exactly the same for every paddle. That's my prediction. Yeah. Because we're looking at three very different paddles here.
We're talking 0.02 difference, milliseconds.
0.02 millisecond difference. But that's in milliseconds how long the ball stays on the face is dwell time. Dwell is actually how far the paddle pockets the ball in terms of, like, I guess what's micrometers probably.
Yeah, I was going to ask,
right?
do you have a measurement in mind?
Yeah, it'd have to be micrometers, which I don't have a sense of how much this is, but it's noticeable in the video, so it's got to be
measurable.
A bunch of So in terms of trampoline flex, not beam flex, right? So trampoline flex is cupping the ball and then releasing the ball, and that cupping, you're getting more dwell on the dwellier paddles, but not more dwell time. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I need to see the original Gearbox Pro Power now. I need to see that.
Oh my God, that's
dwell.
Gonna be, it's gonna be like 1 inch of dwell.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. All right. Let's go 10 more minutes. We'll cover a couple of Q&A. Actually, we had Q&A from last week we never got around to, but
the juicy ones.
Yeah. All right. So again, I pulled all of these questions from the newsletter. So if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, did you ever subscribe yet?
I'm subscribed.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of geeky stuff in there, and it's I'm recapping a lot of what we're talking about in the pod and kind of digestible bites, and then I'm also putting in new stuff each week that is exclusive to
and it's free
newsletter, totally free, 100%. But yeah, lots of great. There's a form on there you can ask questions. Lots of great questions. So I collated some of them here this week. And the first one was from David. He said, "Very cool spin test you did a couple of weeks back." That was referring to sticking the Pickle Pro skins on different paddles and seeing if dwell was a thing. He says, "Why not try a UPA-style spin test as well? Seems like this sort of test could remove variability in the serve technique over time." 100%, David. Thank you for
Sorry,
this.
Dave. I didn't mean to steal your thunder with my statement earlier.
Yes, but I just wanted to say that you were one of the people that gave me this idea, and I've been thinking about it myself as well. But thanks for the nudges from people. I've been seeing these comments, similar ones for some time now, and it makes a difference when people comment and it matches the way I'm thinking, then things tend to happen.
You compiled the questions, showed them to your wife, and explained why you needed the high-speed camera.
She doesn't know yet. No, she does. 100% she does. All right, Ken McCarthy. First off, love the Z-score and agree that the percentiles do not accurately represent things. Question, will the Z-scores be overlaid and comparable between paddles, similar to the way the radar charts could be overlaid? I did find this useful. That is a good question. So yes, I do have a way to represent individual paddles on the Z-score charts and bars. The bars show the distribution of Z-scores and then high, medium, and low within that distribution, and you can see where the paddle falls on this. And so I'll talk with the app developers and website developers and see if we can actually line up I would imagine 2 or 3 before it started getting too clustered. But yeah, I think this is a great idea. And again, great questions lead to changes.
Yeah, when I was listening to the segment last week, I thought, do you think you'll ever have paddles fall off the database? You know, that seemed like that could also be skewing your data. You know, you've got 2-year-plus old paddles that the spin's just not what it is today.
Exactly.
You maybe keep them in, but don't have it affect the Z-score.
Right. So I think in some aspects, it's important to keep some of the older paddles in as a more representative sample. Because if all you focused on was the elite spin paddles, then everything would be concentrated between 200 and 2400 RPM. But we do have some paddles today still spin at 100. But yes, I'm winnowing out some of the irrelevant paddles, some of the ones that are the companies that are out of business, or really weird ones that return like super low swing weights that are throwing things off. Or like I'm keeping the diadem hush in, but I'm hiding its spin numbers from the total because that is skewing things way too high. Right? Yeah. So good point. All right. Stephen A says, what's the KewCor on the E6 Zephyr? I can't believe this thing's legal. One of my favorite paddles from the moment I first picked it up. Underrated, honorable mention for 2025. Funny you mention it, Stephen. The KewCor for the E6 Zephyr is above 0.50.
Wow.
Yeah, which is highly legal. Now, I'm not saying that every Zephyr is illegal. It happens. So sometimes you get one-offs. Sometimes you get a paddle that's core crushed. The Yola Perseus 4 16 millimeters was also above a 0.5, and it's clearly core crushed. And the Zephyr was similar. There's no core crushing in full foam paddles, but something is happening, maybe a little bit disbonding between the face layups. I haven't asked the owner to send me another one, but maybe Stephen got a similarly hot paddle.
Yeah, it could have been a batch.
Yeah, for sure. All right, William Rosser asks, is there any evidence that paddle cleaners actually can prolong the life of carbon fiber surfaces on paddles? And what this means is there's a theory that as you're playing with a raw carbon fiber paddle, you get ball dust in it, and the ball is picking up dust off the courts and then bedding it in between, kind of in the grit of the paddle, basically. And these micro particles of rocks and other debris are actually damaging the paddle if they're left in there. So by cleaning it with an eraser, you're removing these particles and prolonging the life. That's the theory. I've never really tested it. I did it like a microscopic examination of, well, this was one of my first videos. I think it was video number 2. Used the carbon eraser when it first came out, and I looked at it under a microscope at a used paddle that I'd been playing with, did a basic cleaning with it, and it does actually remove a lot more of those microparticles than I thought. So in theory, it's practical. Now you got to weigh whether or not you're actually damaging the grit with the eraser. We've done some experiments with that too, and it doesn't seem to be, but I imagine if you're using it excessively, you're right, then eventually you're going to smooth it down. So yeah, I imagine either way, it's not doing much unless you're playing on a filthy court, and you've got so much debris in your paddle. But I imagine that's more an issue of the ball actually impacting the paddle with a bunch of grit and debris on the ball, and the impact is what's causing it, not debris stuck in the paddle.
Yeah, sounds like showering. Maybe you should just do it once a week.
Yeah, exactly. Once or twice a week. All right, Christos Kosi asks, am I dumb for leaving my pickleball and bag and paddles in my car during the winter? I wouldn't say you're dumb, but definitely don't do that with your paddles.
Yeah, especially if it's polypropylene.
Yeah. So verdict's out on whether or not cold can damage full foam, but I imagine it possibly could. Yeah. So a paddle is comprised of like a bunch of different elements. You got foam, you got honeycomb polypropylene, you got expanded polypropylene, and you've got a face layup of carbon fiber, sometimes fiberglass, and everything's kind of glued together with epoxy. And those binding agents in between all of these different elements are the ones that are prone to be damaged with thermal ranging. So thermal ranging meaning like taking your paddle in where it's very hot and then taking it in where it's very cold, and or leaving it in one extreme for extended periods, whether or not it's direct sunlight, that can cause disbonding where the epoxy separates from the face layers from the core, or who knows what's happening when you're leaving it in freezing cold temperatures. It might be making the epoxy more brittle, and then at a later time when you're playing with that paddle, it could be more prone to breakage.
Yeah, I mean, I would say as a paddle rep, I've absolutely seen increases in core crushing in the winter months. And it's because, maybe if you leave it out in the car and then you let it warm back up, but when you leave it out in the car and you go right in, you start playing, I mean, plastic gets brittle, right?
Yeah, 100%. So that's an instance where if you leave it in the car and it's honeycomb polypropylene, the plastic in the honeycomb gets very, very brittle. And if you don't allow it to, return to room temperature and start playing with it, you're hitting something more brittle.
Yeah.
And it's likely to break and crush. So yeah, that's absolutely something to think about. And you rep 11624, right?
Yeah.
It's like everybody in Relish plays with an 11624. You're a very good rep. David should give you a bonus.
There we go.
All right, one more, and then I got to run. Taylor Bond, he is a scientist. He's a PhD. I'm going to paraphrase what he's saying here. He compliments me, says he loves everything, and then he provides a counter saying that he doesn't agree with the conclusion on my pickle skins test, what we just talked about. He says that lower swing weight leads to a higher RPM. One of my conclusions with that was that lower swing weight can lead to a higher RPM because of a faster head speed.
Yeah.
So similar to, similar to how the higher speeds with the cannon are producing more ball spin, right? If you can swing a paddle faster, theoretically, you can get more spin with it. He recommends filtering the database. He says this doesn't really work out in some of the examples in my database, like where the 14s are spinning faster than the 16s. So he wanted me to filter the database for only paddles of the same build that had multiple thicknesses, and then run a regression style analysis on this. So I did that. But before I show you the results of this, I do want to say that was one observation, that head speed can correlate with spin. And that was in the context of we wanted to test whether or not dwell was enhancing spin.
Right.
And to do that, I tried to standardize everything and use the same variable. So I slapped a pickle skin on different paddles, the wooden paddle, the Inferno, the boomstick, and everything else. And my conclusion was mostly spin is related to grit, and grit alone, probably 90%, and then there's 10% other stuff, not just dwell, but also things like paddle head speed. Another observation I made was that, yes, that dwell has a small impact on spin, probably, because the dwellier ones got slightly more spin, and dwell correlates with paddle thickness. So thicker paddles are going to have more dwell. And that offsets kind of what we're seeing with the thinner paddles have lower swing weights and higher. So it might just be a wash, right? Yeah. There might be a wash where one variable which enhances speed, which is dwell, is found on paddles that are heavier, but lighter paddles have less dwell, but they have higher head speed. So you might not find anything in the data. Okay, so first I did a box and whisker chart, and it's kind of showing by category of thickness, 10 over on the left, 13 millimeter, 14 millimeter, and 16 millimeter, what this looks like. And they're not that different. You can see that the 14 millimeters do have slightly more spin overall if you look at just the box, but for the most part, they're all pretty equal. Yeah. And then again, this is filtered for only paddles that are of the same build and have different thicknesses. Yeah. And I think the total was like, I want to say 40 something.
Yeah, and there's not really any newer paddles that have a 10 millimeter version. So whatever's catching there is going to be older models.
Exactly. And then I did, like you asked, and ran a regression analysis. So I plotted out on the x-axis, we have RPM, y-axis, vertical axis is swing weight, and ran a regression analysis, and the R-squared is 0.05. So it's only explaining 5% of variance in this. It is slightly negative, but that is a wash. So he's right. You can't say objectively that thinner paddles are going to spin more.
Yeah.
But I think we still can say that faster head speeds can result in more spin, but it's going to be offset by the fact that you're using a crappy thin paddle that doesn't have any dwell, and dwell correlates with thickness. Nevertheless, you can use a crappy thin paddle, even a wooden paddle, slap a pickle skin on it, and you're ripping 2,300 RPM serves, because the most important thing for spin, above everything else, I'd say probably over 90%, is grit and texture.
Yeah. And then going back, I mean, like the J6CR, you have that lower swing weight and you have the 16 millimeter thickness. So there's still some combinations that can be made there.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine, and it's got really good grit. Imagine that's going to rip some spin. All right, Clayton. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'd love to see you on again. And
definitely. Eddie, keep traveling.
Eddie does occasionally travel. But thanks, Clayton. I'll see you at the courts.
Yeah, see you at the courts.